some of the questions that a lot of buyers and sellers do have every time that they find themselves in a transaction or about to get under contract on a property. It could be about pricing if we are in a multiple offer situation. It could be about what would happen if the appraisal doesn't come as expected. When you're ready to pull the trigger and put an offer, I will sit down and invest a good 25-30 minutes usually to do my research and do what we call a market analysis. And that market analysis basically tells me if the house, what they're asking, it's pretty much what the house is worth. Depending on what that number is, I can advise if we should offer below asking price, at asking price, or above asking price. I will also take a look and ask deeper questions to the seller's agent to see if we are in a competitive environment, if we have multiple offer, or if it will be a multiple offer situation. Because if there's no reason for you to offer the asking or above asking, why do it? It all depends on the situation, and questions that I'm not afraid to ask are the ones that are gonna reveal what the situation is. Welcome back to another video where I'm gonna be sharing with you more information about the home buying process or home selling process. So today I want to dive in right away into some of the questions that a lot of buyers and sellers do have every time that they find themselves in a transaction or about to get under contract on a property. A lot of the questions that I get asked, it depends on the negotiation. It could be about pricing if we are in a multiple offer situation. It could be about what would happen if the appraisal doesn't come as expected in the inspections and all of that. Throughout the process, there are multiple ways to handle situations. Every agent, every negotiator handles it differently. I'm gonna teach you or show you how I usually approach each one of those. And maybe that would bring more questions to you, and I'll be happy to answer them if you reach out to me directly. Okay, so let's jump in. Questions, for example, that people ask me. How strong are the competitive offers, pricing, financing, contingencies? Let's say that you're a seller and you ask me about those. Well, I'm gonna share with you the most important terms that we usually look into whenever we are considering an offer. But more than that, we're also going to dive in more on what's important to you. For example, I do have a seller that I'm helping right now that needs some sort of post-occupancy or at least a loan closing. Why? Because they're selling their property and they're acquiring another one. And while they wait to close on that next property, they still need some time before moving out from theirs. So that period that we call post-occupancy, meaning we can close on the property and still request for the new buyer to give us 1, 2, 3 weeks more before we hand out the keys and we can move out of the property. So we're gonna tailor the terms depending on what is important or necessary for you. So I'm gonna go back and put together what are the main terms of each one of the offers. We can compare and sit down, and obviously that's in the event that we are in a multiple offer situation. What terms matter most to the seller besides pricing, closing date, lease back, or fewer contingencies? It depends on the specific scenario of each one of the sellers. Should we waive contingency like inspection, appraisal, financing? What are the risks? Imagine that you're the buyer and you're asking me that. Should we waive these terms like inspection, appraisal, or some sort of loan contingency? The answer should be maybe. There are some things that most of the time you don't want to waive. For example, a good inspection. You have to be very certain that the house is in good condition before waiving that one. Why? Because there's just so much that we can see on the naked eye from the outside. We don't know what's behind the walls. So I can understand if sometimes in a multiple offer situation, the way to win it will be to maybe make it more attractive by removing the inspection period, but you are exposing yourself to a lot of risk. What about the appraisal? Similar situation, especially if you are financing, which it's most of the cases. Why would you need an appraiser? You don't know the ultimate value of the property or the ultimate value that that appraiser that is assigned to that transaction will give it. In the event that it comes lower, if you waive that specific term, what you're basically telling the seller that you're willing to pay any difference between what the appraisal said and what the actual contract price is. What about financing? The financing, well, that's where we can play around with the timelines depending on how fast the lender can give an approval, how much information they already have about you as the borrower, and then we can tailor that to make it more attractive. Should we include a personal letter to the seller? That is tricky. When you write up the letter, you can also put yourself in a position where you're trying to influence on the seller. And I don't always recommend it, but communication directly from a buyer to a seller is not always good, because it can dilute the negotiation. Some questions about pricing. Are we offering at, below, or above market value? That's a great question. And the answer is it depends. It depends on the market that we are, it depends on the competition that we have, and the whole circumstance, and the actual value of that asking price. So my job, and the way that I usually handle if I'm representing you as the buyer, is when you're ready to pull the trigger and put an offer, I will sit down and invest a good 25-30 minutes usually to do my research and do what we call a market analysis. And that market analysis basically tells me if the house, what they're asking, it's pretty much what the house is worth. And depending on what that number is, I can advise if we should offer below asking price, at asking price, or above asking price. I will also take a look and ask deeper questions to the seller's agent to see if we are in a competitive environment, if we have multiple offer, or if it will be a multiple offer situation. Because if there's no reason for you to offer the asking or above asking, why do it? It all depends on the situation, and questions that I'm not afraid to ask are the ones that are going to reveal what the situation is. How do recent comparable sales support or offer? Great question. I check on what's sold in the last 6 months, and then that will give me an idea of the value of the property, and then we tailor our offer based on those numbers. What's our walkaway price? Well, usually sellers ask that, and the question is more phrased as how much am I going to be walking away from it, which is a very fair question. At the end, it doesn't matter how much the buyer buys it at, it doesn't matter how much closing cost commission people make. It's more about what are you gonna net at the end of the day. And what I usually do to answer your question in a more specific way, it's I do bring what I call a seller estimated net sheet to the listing appointment or prior to put the property on the market. What I put different scenarios and all the costs involved, paying off your mortgage, closing costs, commissions, HOA fees, whatever it's involved, so you can have an idea on how much you're gonna walk away after everything checks out. Let's go into some of the questions that also sellers have whenever pricing their property. Are we priced correctly for current market conditions? Fair question. Again, numbers will give us that answer. Should we counter or accept this offer as is? In my case, as a top negotiator, I always say, avoid going for the no when a yes is always possible. Meaning, we don't lose anything by countering any offer. Countering and having conversations, it's part of the process. So we can counter, and I usually advise to counter any offer made until we get what's the very best and put you in the very best position possible. So the way that I usually approach negotiations is always countering. Never accept, reject as is, always counter to what you feel comfortable with, to what you're looking for, because you never know if the person in the other side is going to say yes. What concessions are we willing to make? It's up to you and your situation we can always, in a negotiation, work things out depending on what's convenience to you. What about in the event that we have low appraisal issues? How do we handle an appraisal that comes below market value? What I usually do is I come back to the buyer, and whatever gap that is, we try to close it as close as possible. Why? Because the reality is this: if the appraisal came lower, more than likely it's because the house is not simply worth that. The house is overpriced. And maybe I'm on your side and I'm representing you, and we try to shoot for the moon and try to get as high as possible. But we got a buyer that is financing that has an appraisal contingency, and the appraisal comes lower. Well, what the appraisal usually tells us is the actual value of the home. So as the seller, you have to be aware that that could be the actual value of the home. So whenever it's a gap, especially it's a big gap, you have to be open, if you can, of course, to negotiate with the buyer. Not necessarily, you're not obligated to accept whatever appraisal value comes at, but if you can, to close that gap, to make it more appealing for the buyer to reach their pocket and put money on top of that appraisal value if they really want the house. It becomes a negotiation that I try not to get ourselves into by resolving all these issues out front and knowing the numbers out front. But if it ever happens, which it happens often too, well, that's the way to handle it, depending on the numbers and what you feel comfortable with. Should the buyer cover the appraisal gap, and how much? Well, if I'm on the buyer's side and I'm representing you as the buyer, it's a fair question, and it depends on how much you want the property, how much your capability financially also allows. Can we renegotiate the purchase price? After you are under contract, unless you have a specific argument on why, you can always renegotiate the purchase price. Usually the main two part of the process that allowed you to do that, it's during the inspection. If you find any deficiencies in the property, you can negotiate it by lowering the price, or asking for a credit, or asking for the seller to repair those things, or in the appraisal process value in the event that it comes lower. So the answer is yes, we can renegotiate that. Should we challenge the appraisal or request a reconsideration of value? Great question here. What if the appraisal comes lower? Can we go back and tell the appraisal, hey, you need to reconsider because of this, and that? Is that allowed? Yes. In most cases, do people do it? No. And I don't usually do it, and I haven't necessarily done it in the 10+ years that I've been doing real estate. Why? Because what you're basically doing by challenging an appraisal is telling that professional you didn't do the right job. And they still have the power to go back and revisit the numbers, revisit the reports, but more than often, more than likely, they don't. It's questionable the reason why. I always say that it has to do a lot with an ego perspective, but unless I have a very, very good case on some specific comparables that I think are ideal for our property or subject property that the appraisal didn't consider, I wouldn't even go there and challenge it at all. Are there backup offers, and can we leverage? Let's say that you are on the seller side. You're gonna ask me, are there any backup offers? If the answer is no, then we need to figure something out with the current offer that we have. If there are backup offers, we can use that as leverage to increase the value of whatever offer we have that you value the most and you're considering accepting. Can we restructure the terms? During the transaction, you can restructure everything as long as both parties agree and re-sign whatever addendum that it's created to change the terms in the contract. Terms cannot be changed just because. They have to be, once they're signed, they have to be agreed by both parties and put in writing whatever change you request. What about some of the questions in the inspection and repairs negotiations? A good question is, what issues are deal breakers versus negotiable? I always like to mention to buyers specifically, the big ticket items are things that should be always negotiable or could be a deal breaker for you depending on the circumstance. Things like a roof, plumbing, AC, electrical, those things can cost a lot to replace, to repair, And it is why it's important to make sure that you know the state of those before getting under contract and know if they're gonna be a deal breaker or negotiable in your favor. Should we ask for repairs, credits, or a price reduction? Listen to this, great question. Should we ask for repairs, credits, or a price reduction? Let's say that I'm representing you as the buyer and we do the inspection and a few things come back not in the best shape in the home. Should we ask for repairs, for the seller to repair those, for a credit, for the seller to give us a credit at closing, or for a price reduction? The answer, it depends. It depends on what is most convenient for you and for the transaction and what is cleanest for you. Why? Let's say we can ask for repairs. Well, remember something, the seller is selling their property. They just want to get rid of it. If there's something to be fixed, they're not going to, more than likely, they won't pay the best professional to fix it and pay the most and the highest premium to fix the problem and hire the best professionals on the market to resolve that issue, because at that point, they just want to get the problem solved with the least amount of time and resources so they can move forward with their transaction or their next move. So because of that, depending on what it is that needs to be repaired, I could advise to actually request a repair or a credit. The credit is the second choice and the best one and the cleanest one. Why? Because you get the credit for the value of the repair or the replacement, and you get to, after closing, do the repair or the replacement yourself with the professionals that you like, at the price that you like, and you feel satisfied because you were the one that did the work yourself. Price reduction as well. It's pretty similar to what a credit will represent. At the end, it's numbers that you can use in your favor. Should we get multiple repair estimates whenever fixing something? Yes, that could be something that can be helpful, but timing is also, in a transaction, timing is essential. So we want to make sure that you don't spend a lot of time just getting quotes and miss the deadlines during the transaction. Can the seller offer a credit instead of fixing items? Yes, definitely. Most of the time, if I'm on the seller side, I'd rather offer a credit to the buyer so I don't put yourself in that position where you have to contact handymans, contact contractors to fix stuff in the house. So I'm gonna leave it there for now. I'm going to do a second part of this video so you can get familiar with some of the questions and things that can come up during a transaction, regardless if you are on the buyer side or on the seller side. So I hope this was super helpful for you. And remember, if you're looking to buy or sell a property in South Florida specifically, I want to be your guide. So looking forward to hear from you. Have an amazing rest of your day.